Ari,
Yes.
this is Reyn, Archer with Congressman Fortenberry. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm fine.
Well, that's good. I think you know some of the nature of this, and I just look. I want to just be very, very clear that we support First Amendment. We believe in the importance of dialogue around complexity and bringing progressive and middle and right thinking into a dialogue with students and helping them to learn to think for themselves. And I think whatever persuasion you have in your politics or whatever way you teach is really important for our young people. I think the thing that we're concerned about is whether liking vandalism, which is against the law, and on Facebook, which is, again, we know that Twitter and Facebook can get people in trouble, and also secondarily that the justification that the organization that posted all of those things is now using you as justification for their behavior. If you look at some of the Facebook posts, they're saying, yes, Dr. Ari Kohen supports our approach, so to speak. So they're using your imprimatur as their justification.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for the callback. When I talked to Kevin Smith this morning, I have to admit I was a little bit confused, and I apologize that I didn't get your voicemail message. I was out of town at a conference from Friday until I guess it was Wednesday afternoon, and so I apologize that I didn't get back to you. Well, I guess I want to say a few things. I mean, the first thing to say, obviously, is I don't like vandalism. And I don't think that there's any indication anywhere in anything I've ever written or posted that I like vandalism. But certainly if I'm clicking through on my phone, as I was over the weekend, and I come across something that I think is amusing, I might have clicked like, I might have clicked haha, I might have clicked any number of things. And I'll be honest with you, Reyn, I thought that the sign, the picture that they put up, looked funny. That's all. And I think lots of people probably thought it looked funny. I understand, obviously, that those signs cost money, and I understand that the congressman is not happy that somebody vandalized his sign, and I can completely understand that. But from an outside perspective, it was googly eyes on a sign, and it changed, and it was some toilet humor. And you know, I have to admit, I am not, you know, sometimes on my own time, I get a laugh out of that kind of thing. But
right, but I think,
let me just say, in no way do I condone anybody vandalizing anything, even if I find something funny.
Right, I just think you have to realize that I mean, we have screenshots of you liking and others on the site using your rationale for why they think this is appropriate political discourse. And
well,
so
when you say using my rationale, what do you mean? I didn't comment on anything.
No, they used you. They basically appropriated your like as justification for their behavior and put it in another post and repeated your name in that way.
Well, I certainly haven't seen that. If that's something you could send to me, if you say you have a screenshot, if that's something you could send to me, I would be really appreciative of that, because whomever is doing that is not using anything that I gave them permission to use. But
well, no, I know you didn't give them permission, so I'm not assuming that. I want to be really clear about what my, because again, staying in the very narrow frame of what our concern is that there are things that we can look. Humor has changed a lot, as you know, over the last 5 years. What we thought was funny, and even Seinfeld is saying, you know, it's really difficult to be a comedian nowadays because things are misunderstood in the context of humor. So, yes, you can have a laugh about potty humor or about googly eyes, but the point is that you're also secondarily validating and liking vandalism without it, in a way that you may not have intended, but it is a direct validation of vandalism as well, which is because why you did it is not known to the observer, only that you did it, right?
So I want to be really clear. Is it the case that your office is going through, I'm looking at a post now I assume you're talking about the Seeing Red Nebraska blog. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I'm looking there, and the post that I like has 109 people who have liked it, 31 shares, and 13 comments. Am I to understand, Reyn, that your office is going through and contacting all of those people?
No, we care deeply about those who have responsibilities to the community and are part of a community, and because you're a professor, we think you are held to a different standard than anyone else, and because you can't be distinct from your role as teaching folks political science, and this is all about political science, so you've got to be careful about the optics of yourself, and particularly as you live in a community of UNL and the department, which we care deeply about. And we also know that people in our who are Republicans are offended by professors. You know, professors have been called out for denigrating individual students, for saying things or supporting certain political persuasions. Not that you did that.
No, I didn't. And also,
no, I know.
And let me say too. I mean, we can keep going here, but I've been teaching at the University of Nebraska since 2007, and in all of that time, I have never had a single comment from a student on a single course evaluation. We're talking about thousands and thousands of students. Never a single one that mentions any sort of problem or concern or issue. But I want to make really clear something here, because I want to make sure that I have the standard that we're setting correct. And the standard here is not something that I've posted, right? Not something that I have written, but you're going through and seeing what I have liked on my private Facebook page, right?
I know, but what you're liking is vandalism.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I'm liking a photo.
You're liking what the photo represents as vandalism.
But
if someone were liking something with blackface, would that be acceptable? If someone were liking, you see, you've got to understand. These are icons. They're not, and they're representative of behavior. We know all this through our social learning.
So your argument is that anything that I like on Facebook represents an endorsement by me of the thing, not the post, but the thing that is happening in the world.
Correct.
I see. And is that why you contacted not simply me to sort this out, but my immediate supervisor and my dean and also the chancellor of the university?
Well, that's why I called you first and gave you an opportunity to call me back. And when I didn't hear that, I escalated it. Yes, that's correct.
What was your hope in contacting the dean and the chancellor of the university? What was the goal there?
Is to remind them that we live in a community and that it is important that faculty not condone vandalism or even worse, violence.
But there's no violence happening here, right?
How do you know?
How do we know that the thing that I clicked on, how do I know that that's actually something that happened in the world rather than a Photoshop?
You don't, but
right.
It's still posted as vandalism.
No, if someone posted a picture of me,
they actually named exactly where it was located. Frankly, on the same site.
In fact, you'll note they posted that after I liked it. It's an update.
Right, but what you're trying to do is create justification, and frankly, what we all have is First Amendment rights, and we all get to decide what we believe they are.
You're right, and you're suggesting that what should have happened here is that I shouldn't have clicked on something. I should have known that because I'm a university professor, there would be consequences for something that I find funny.
No, there are consequences for something that you support that is vandalism on its face,
or that might not be. Right? I mean, what we're doing here. Look, I don't want to get into the weeds. My real concern.
No, but you are getting into the weeds, sir.
The concern here is that you're going through and checking to see what individuals living in Nebraska
I'm not checking. You have to understand. I'm not checking. I don't care personally, but this came to us through other quarters.
Yeah, of course it
did. In other words, people are observing. We live in community. They observe what we do.
And
it came to me from people who observed it and were offended by your behavior.
By liking something.
Yes, because you're liking vandalism.
Okay, and why didn't those people reach out to me instead of to a congressman? That seems odd.
Okay. It makes complete sense.
Really?
We're the target of the vandalism.
I'm a little bit surprised, I have to say. What this
Well, I'm a little bit honestly, Ari, I'm very surprised that you can't see the distinction. Because in a class that you would teach these distinctions, because that's what you trained at Duke. And frankly, you are trying to manipulate the dynamic of the conversation. And frankly, we have a First Amendment opportunity to basically put you out there in front of everybody and even put this clearly as, why is a professor liking vandalism? We can do that publicly. Would you like that?
I think it'd be
That's our First Amendment right, too.
I think it'd be a terrible idea for you, if I'm being perfectly honest. Again,
how so?
Because the optics of this are terrible, Reyn. I don't mean
That's
to,
not my name is not Reyn, it's Ren.
My apologies. Let me go with Dr. Archer. That will be easier. I
called to try to get to an accommodation, but it is seeming that that's not possible with you. Because what I hear is an intellectual justification.
What is the accommodation that you were hoping for?
For you to understand the optics of this, and you don't. I don't want to mea culpa. I don't want you to go into the world and communicate that. But I certainly don't sense that you have any sense of concern about the notion of liking vandalism as a professor of political science.
I think I told you right from the get-go, I don't like vandalism.
No, but you did like it. You liked it in the face.
I liked a comedy Facebook post. I think there's a big difference.
So some people like blackface. Would that be inappropriate for them to like it?
I would disagree with them. I mean, you're talking about the First Amendment, but you've threatened me twice now. On the phone.
What?
Now you've threatened me twice. The first time you threatened me by going to my supervisors, and the second time just now you said you're going to make this all public. Would I like that? But you want to reach an accommodation with me. I don't really understand.
You didn't start out from an attempt to create an accommodation. You came to a point of justifying your behavior.
I think the behavior is quite simple. I liked a Facebook post.
Right, because you're liking vandalism. I mean, so then we say a professor doesn't know the distinction between liking humor and liking vandalism. They think vandalism that's humorous is worth liking.
I mean,
listen, is that the way?
You're very welcome to say that. It obviously isn't true, but you're very welcome to say that. I can't control what you're going to do in the same way
I can't control what you're going to do either.
But you'd like to.
No, not at all. I'm just suggesting that you live in a community in which I'm raising a point to you, in which I gave you the courtesy of calling you and leaving you a message on your phone. And if you didn't get it, then you have a broken system. And you didn't choose to listen to it. You didn't choose to call me back.
When did you leave the message, just out of curiosity?
I can go in and look in my emails because I left a note. It was either Monday or Tuesday morning, Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning. I can't remember which it was. So I did try to go to you directly outside of the system, and then I assumed that when you didn't respond to me over 2 days, then I gave you 2 days intentionally because I figured you could be out, or who knows, because I wanted to do this in a polite way, and I didn't hear back from you, so...
Yep. No, you're right, and I apologize. I was at a conference on Monday and Tuesday presenting my research. I came back to Nebraska on Wednesday, and on Wednesday, I take it, you had emailed Professor Smith and Dean Tice Morris and Chancellor Green.
Correct.
Right. But again, I mean, if the position of the congressman's office is that any constituent, any Nebraskan...
No, not any constituent. You are held to a different standard because you have a public trust.
Why am I held to a different standard on my private
Facebook? Because if a professor if a professor is liking vandalism or a professor is shutting down political dialogue, it's very different than if a citizen is liking it.
But I'm not shutting down dialogue in any way.
No, I didn't say you were, but you know, one of your fellow professors was called out for shutting down political dialogue at UNL. We've also had individual professors who've been involved with Antifa and some of the other Betsy Riot and other things and nationally beyond the boundaries of Nebraska that have been called out.
Okay, none of that has anything to do with me. I don't know about any of that.
But we all live in an ecosystem in which all these things do hold together. Are you familiar with Felton Earl's work and broken windows at the university? At Harvard?
No, I'm not.
So you don't know anything about broken windows as a theory?
The broken windows theory of policing?
Well, it's the idea is if you leave broken windows, it means you're going to let the festering of other things happen. You can't leave broken windows in a community without allowing the community to continue to believe it's appropriate to break windows and do other things. That's the point.
I see. So each time someone with any, so not just professors, I assume, but you're also keeping track of what other people are liking on Facebook? Anyone who has a public trust?
I don't really care. I don't care. I don't keep care if Betsy Riot does this. That's their business. They can go. They can have a citation and go to jail for doing it, and they can have that. But you are a professor at UNL, and you are then representing what you're basically saying inferentially is that as a part of the political discourse, getting involved in vandalism and sending it out in social media and creating dynamics in which people think it's either humorous or funny or whatever, and supporting the notion of vandalism is appropriate political discourse. That's what you're saying.
It's not at all what I'm saying. It's what you're taking me to say, and those are two very different things. And I appreciate that that's how you feel, but it isn't remotely what I've said.
So do you not think that a person of reasoning could look at that and say, he is validating vandalism as a part of political discourse?
I don't know anyone who would say that.
I think a lot of people would. That's what they came to us and said when they saw it.
I mean,
people sent it. A number of people sent it who were in the Nebraska community who were observing and were offended by it, and that's why it came to our attention.
If that's the
we aren't
case,
looking for you. We're not looking at these things. I don't search them. I really don't have time to search all that. I'm trying to do actually real things.
If that's the case, I assume, since I'm accused of something here, offending people, I should be able to see who it is that's being offended. You say that multiple people sent this to you, right? You have screenshots and so on and so forth.
People in the community who are just regular citizens said, why is a professor liking vandalism?
And do you have that available?
That's not my obligation to share to you. My obligation is to ask you to...
Well, you said that...
I think that...
Dr. Archer, you said that it came to your attention because a number of people sent it to you. And this is not the first time that we've heard that multiple people and many people have said and done X, Y, and Z. But there's
not
never
many people. It's a couple of people, and they're active in political circles, and they saw it, and they thought it was offensive.
And I would love to see that. And I would apologize to those people because I don't want to offend anyone.
But you're offending the community. It's not the person. I think you're misunderstanding in that sense, and that's tragic in its own way, because it's not about, it's very easy to say, well, I'm sorry to one person, but the point is our behavior has consequences to communities, not just to one or two people. It's about, and I believe you understand that intellectually, because I know what you've studied, and I think it's important what you've studied. So I'm not trying to denigrate who you are or what you've studied. I think it's very valuable, and it's valuable to Nebraskans who need to learn and understand and be pressed. So I don't want that to be the point. I mean, the point is, I want this to be a dynamic in which...
Listen, I completely agree with you. But my concern, and this is why I perhaps got a bit hot with you a few minutes ago, my concern is that the suggestion seems to be that professors should watch what they say, whether they're in the classroom or not in the classroom. Professors should watch what they say. And one of the big concerns, as you know, with the First Amendment is a chilling effect that this kind of discussion that we're having right now can have on speech. Right?
Right, and we know that the dialogue around First Amendment. I agree with you. I agree with you, and I think there are limitations and problems that have been created on both the left and the right around this issue. And I think that there should not be a chilling effect of your right to speak about ideas. But if you tell someone to go blow up a bomb, or you tell somebody to go vandalize, or you validate and say in inference that vandalism is a part of political discourse, by inference, you have to be careful about whether you are constraining yourself in the context of the First Amendment, in which it ends when your fist hits my jaw, as you know. So I think we all know that this is a very complicated area, and we also know that it is important. It's foundational to the civilization, without question. We couldn't survive without it. And at the same time, the way we do it also allows us to continue to do it, to be in this robust conversation with each other. And so we're saying and requesting that you look at your behavior and think about it as being an inference of supporting vandalism, which is we don't think is appropriate political discourse.
I take your point. I don't know what else to say. We can go around and around on this for some time. I take your point. I have to tell you, I have been a Facebook user for 11 years, as long as I have been at the University of Nebraska. And in all of that time, I have used the platform to start conversations, to engage people in debate, to do so respectfully. If you go through my public page, I am exchanging ideas with people, and I'm attempting to do so in a serious, thoughtful way, because I think that is part of the goal of a public-facing Facebook persona.
And I think that's brilliant, because it's part of the way we learn and engage with each other today. So
But
I have no...
It had not ever, at any time, it had not ever occurred to me, not a single time, that someone would be made aware of something that I like. I like movies on Facebook, and people might not like those movies. I like restaurants on Facebook, and some of those restaurants I don't eat at any longer. But I'll tell you, and I have friends on Facebook, some of whom are people that other people might not like.
I don't, but my job is not to be involved in that part of things. My job is to try to understand. I care deeply about the political process. You know, I'm a bleeding heart conservative. I care deeply about the poor and those who've been disenfranchised. I appreciate your work in that regard. I've spent my life working with the poor. I've spent my life living overseas and working with the poor. And I care deeply about justice for them, access to health care. These are the things I've worked on. So it's not that I'm in any way, I believe we all have to open our minds to lots of things that we don't see. And I think someone like yourself is going to help students in Nebraska do that. But I do think because you are working from one side of the equation towards then the side that I sit on, if I liked something that some white supremacist did because I thought it was funny, you wouldn't think that was funny. If there are lots of things that I could theoretically, and I'm very, very cautious as the chief of staff in where I put my name, because I am a public person in the sense of my responsibility to the congressmen, to the constituents, and so I think liking vandalism is a very risky thing to do. It might have been funny, but it's still vandalism.
Okay. I mean, I can't look. I mean, again, as I say, we can go around and around on this.
Right.
But
again, you know that there are fines that are associated with this for those who are caught. So that is, it's already defined as illegal to do this, right?
Sure.
I mean, it is sort of. I mean, at some level, it is. it's angels dancing on the head of a pin. But at the same point in time, when we talk about broken windows, little things matter.
I suppose they do. For me, I think that there is. I mean, we're talking about what I tend to think of as worlds of difference. I think that when white supremacists post things and people think that they're funny, I don't, right?
I don't either.
But I'll tell you another thing.
I think it's disgusting.
I have to say, I have never once called for someone who liked something like that to face consequences. I don't think it's my place.
Well, you're better than some people, let's just say.
Well, I think that's the. I mean, I want to live in a world of First Amendment protections and academic freedom. I don't want to live in a world where people are running around policing what other people find funny. I think that's a big problem.
But again, you're splitting hairs by making it de minimis in the context of which we've established that it might be humorous, but it's still vandalism.
I cannot. I mean, we can continue to go round and round on this. I do not think that that liking a Facebook post is the same thing as encouraging vandalism. I discourage vandalism, in fact. If anyone asked me, should I go vandalize something, I would immediately tell them no. There is no way to know from looking at this post whether anybody saw it and noticed that I had any engagement with it. Now, it turns out that my guess is someone who is a Facebook friend of mine noticed what I liked and sent it to you. And I'll be honest with you, I have my suspicions of who it is. But you know what? I'm okay with that. I'll give him a call. I'll be happy to give him a call, and I'll be happy to sit down and talk with him, as I have always been happy to talk with him. And the reason that I think he saw it is because I wrote something endorsing someone who's running against this person for an elected office on the same blog just before this was posted. And
right, and all of that is certainly protected, and you have every right to do that. And I'm not even trying to. I don't want to constrain your right to think and write about ideas and people and politics and all of that. I think that's important, even if we disagree.
But I want to draw the line for you. And again, maybe I'm overreaching, but I want to draw the line for you. I wrote a public post on a web blog that's read by a fair number of people, and I said, in the Secretary of State race, this is why I would support this person rather than this person, right? And the person who I did not support, I'm certain saw that post and didn't like it. And those are political ideas, and we can have a debate about why I made that post, but it was about political ideas. It was about the right to vote as opposed to voting as a privilege. It was about the death penalty as a salient issue in Nebraska, right? Those are political ideas.
So I read that too, and I read that too, and I had no problem with that whatsoever.
Right, but somebody did, and that person tipped you off about a different post that I liked, and that led to you calling me, and ultimately to what I felt were potential threats. And that's the concern that we face today.
But it's a threat to us in the sense of having a tenured professor go out and say this is good. This vandalism is okay and good and funny.
I understand your position. And
you have to understand also that my boss has had vandalism of his home. His children were scared. He has young children. They were deeply worried because there were some hate things put on his sign and his yard before, and in his house. So these are very tumultuous times, and people are hypersensitive.
I completely agree. I don't condone any of those behaviors. They are not behaviors that I would do, or that anyone that I actually that I spend time with would do.
If we were here's the deal, Ari. If it were other circumstances, I'd probably enjoy hanging out with you and talking and debating because I like the ideas that I believe you espouse. So I'm not trying to browbeat you into some political position. I think you are myopic to this because you're disappointed in the response that happened in regards to your own action, and you don't. I mean, in a sense, you live in a community, and you have to. Now all your superiors are looking at you. But I didn't do that without giving you a chance to engage me.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not concerned about my superiors. Just between you and me, this is not a concern of mine. I don't love that we went in that direction, but it isn't a worry. I don't face any kind of disciplinary issue here, and I have a quite good relationship with all three of those people.
They're all very good people, frankly, and they're again, we have a very good relationship with the leadership, and we respect the way they manage. We don't, and that we see them fostering reasonable and appropriate debate around complex issues and encouraging our students to learn. So we like that.
Well, as do I. My concern, again, is really about the process that this took, right? The fact is, in a normal world, Congressman Fortenberry's chief of staff, a week and a half before an election, is not concerned with me. There is no universe where this conversation, a 30-minute conversation, there's no universe where this makes sense for you. And I'll be honest.
Actually, I'm giving time to this because I would otherwise be going home to my family, but I'm talking to you because I think dialogue is really important.
I appreciate it. But what I'm saying to you is this is way, way below your pay grade. It is below the dignity of your office and the office of the congressman. And I understand.
But isn't that for us? I mean,
I understand.
Let me just speak. I mean, so Ari, please, that's elitist to basically decide what is appropriate for me and not for me. You wouldn't do that to somebody else. You wouldn't say that. That's not really. I mean, it's elitist to say that.
What I mean by that is, I think that people have wasted your time. That's all.
They may have wasted my time, but I'm just telling you that because we live in a very sensitive time, and this has already happened a number of other times, and we have a number of other professors who have been highly active in resistance in Betsy Riot, and we believe have been the ones that have animated the signs that were put on his lawn and were hateful. So we believe they're professors. We actually were trying to find fingerprints because professors have an obligation to teach our young people how to engage vigorously in debate and to help change this country to make it a more perfect union.
Yes, I agree with you.
But they also, at the same time, if they crash, if they throw bricks and put blood on senators' offices and throw bricks through the Republican Party and wear masks and do all that and torment, there is a certain animation that is not looking good in some sense. And a lot of people believe we're on the verge of a civil war in this country, whether it's true or not. So all of this sort of pettiness, the violence, is awful, but the vandalism is certainly, it's minor, but it matters in the larger scheme of things. There have always been people stealing each other's signs in politics. I mean, I grew up in this business, and my dad was a Democrat and switched parties. So I've been doing this since I was 8 years old. So I know all of the games and the silliness. But I'm just saying that I think you're a reasonable human being, and I think you could have thought better about this action. And I believe that that's really all I'm trying to leave you with, is that I hope that you will be more conscious of the notion that you're not just liking funny, you're liking vandalism. And I haven't been able to get you to actually say that in that direct sense. And it seems to me, and again, I understand because you're an intelligent human being, and you have worked hard to build a career. And I grew up with in a very intelligent family where most of my siblings and my nieces and nephews have been valedictorians of high schools and gone to major universities and gotten major, all of that. So I've grown up with a lot of very intelligent people. And intelligent people hate to be told that they did something potentially wrong.
I think that that's accurate. I try to be someone who accepts criticism openly. Part of my profession is that I send my ideas out into the world, and then people tell me that they're wrong. And that is how I have, in part, made my living. When I walk into a classroom, I tell my students, I'm going to try out these ideas, and you tell me where I fail. I try my hardest to accept criticism.
I love that. I admire that. Truly, I do.
And I understand that from your perspective, liking this post equates with liking the action that the post depicts.
That's correct.
And that was absolutely not my intention. I do not like vandalism. I certainly, the extreme measures that you mention of people throwing bricks through windows, I abhor. I think that that is not dialogue in any way. It is simply violence. I think that there is, for me, and again, it may be different for you, it may be different for everyone, there is a category difference that we're talking about here. But as we live our lives increasingly online, it may be the case that that is disappearing. It may be the case that seeing something online and finding it funny, it means that you would also find it funny if you walked past it in the real world, or if someone came up to you and said they were going to do it, you would give them a thumbs up. I try to separate those two things out, and so for me, it seems very clear that I can see something and I can find it amusing and I can put it away in a different box from something that's going on in the world, in the same way that I can watch television and understand that something that's filmed entertainment is not real. But from your perspective, as the people who were the targets of this ad, it obviously feels very different. This is what's happening in your lives, and so I understand. We're approaching this from two different directions because it's so far removed from my life that it merely looked like a funny joke when I was clicking through my timeline on a weekend, right?
So the question is, would you do it again? In other words, because at some level it may have been not willful, and then but now if you do it, it's willful, you see.
So here's the difference. No, I think that's a great question. That's a really good question. And if I knew that this would cause someone to feel bad, and feel bad enough to get in touch with your office, and then for your office to feel so bad about this, there is no question I would not do it again. No. Certainly, I wouldn't like something.
That helps me understand your nature as a human being, and realize that we're dealing with another human being who's playing on the same playing field around First Amendment and other things that allows us to have the dialogue that's essential for the well-being of the nation. And otherwise, that would be a problem, you see. So we're trying to establish the proper order of things again, because they've been out of bounds. And frankly, we're not mature enough in social media to know the innuendo or nuance that we're communicating on, and we're clumsy in it right now.
Sure.
A lot of us are.
Sure. No, before they changed the timelines, on Twitter, I used to click the like button to highlight where I had stopped reading. Right? It wasn't that I liked that post necessarily. It was that I wanted to come back after work or whatever and pick up where I had left off. Now they've changed the timeline, so you can't do that. You miss a lot more posts. But I follow very few people, and even back then I followed even less, and I didn't want to miss what the people that I followed had to say. So I would put a like as like a bookmark. Now, if someone went back and looked at things that I liked in 2009, maybe there are things that I don't actually like. I didn't go through and clean out those bookmarks. But I think,
again, I also don't think people should be held accountable for something, throwing ice at 16. So I mean, it's a little, we're living in a very weird world in which everything we've ever done is being put through a microscope, and I don't think that bodes well for us, because at the end of the day, we have to have a society that at some level has mercy for itself. You know, if there's no mechanism for any forgiveness around anything, it doesn't bode well for us. So, and again, that's where I wanted to start with on this thing, that obviously once people get off the rail with each other, it's very easy to misunderstand each other.
Yes, I agree, and I have to admit, I began in some level of concern because we have seen, at universities all over the country, an absolute mob mentality about faculty saying and doing whatever it is they might say or do. And when you mentioned that that was something that you might do, I have to admit, I reacted to that. Right?
Well, no, and you have to understand that you were also pressing me into telling me that you saw no problem when I felt there was a problem. And again, my point was to try to get you to listen to me, not to offend you.
Okay. Well, I think we have a better sense of where each other is coming from here than we did half an hour ago, and I'm glad for that.
Well, I am as well, and because I really don't want to go start communicating about our Kohen validating and supporting and condoning violence. I don't want to do that.
And again, I would say I'm glad you don't want to do that, because that would be an error. That would be an absolutely incorrect statement. And so, I mean, again, I really, I would really encourage you, to think about where this is coming from. I am certainly not a person who condones or approves of violence or vandalism of any kind. I am, without doubt, someone with a sarcastic sense of humor. I am absolutely someone who might find something funny and say I think it's funny. And I may later say, but make sure you don't, I mean, certainly that's not a thing you should do. It's not something I would ever teach my children to do. But I think that if we remove all humor from the world, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
I couldn't agree more with you. I couldn't agree more with you, but we're at such a level of not understanding political correctness, and Jonathan Haidt and all of this group out of the East that are starting to set, this new group that's, out of Princeton saying think for yourself. I mean, there's a real growing backlash to this sort of political correctness that we've seen in some of the universities at Yale, and which Christakis and his wife were shut down because of something they did, and I mean, and safe places and blah, 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 blah. I mean, my son just graduated from UVA, and, they've just lived through so much turmoil over the last, 4 years. So, with Charlottesville and Hannah Graham and the fake Slate story and, Rolling Stone story, and all these things that roil the students, they're all so suggestible as young people, and it's a time we have to figure out between us, even if we disagree on the political things, we have to agree on the terms for engagement, right? And we have to hold ourselves accountable and teach our kids how to do these things properly.
Yes, I agree with that absolutely. I am someone who, again, if we're talking about what the university should do, I have always been someone who is not a fan of restricting who comes to campus to speak, or what they say, or finding safe spaces. I am not that kind of faculty member. I believe in robust discussion and dialogue, and I don't think, again, that there are ideas that we should shut down out of hand unless those ideas are themselves discriminatory or violent on their face. So, again, I don't think we're coming to this from a place that's really, really far apart. My only worry is that that there are people, or more likely a person, in my community.
It's more than one person. I'll just tell you that.
Well, that's fine. So once I call Bob, I'll have to figure out who else I need to call. But the concern is that people expressing legitimate disagreement might be punished for something else, right? And that's that's a real problem.
Again, it is, but you remember, if you're going to be a professor, a full professor one day, or maybe you already are, if you're going to be a chairman, you have to become more delicate in everything you do because you're held to higher account. And so, there's this nutcase in Florida who sent all these bombs, but there's screws loose in this human being's mind. What was he thinking? It doesn't make sense. So, but you can't do that if you're a professor,
obviously. Certainly. Certainly.
I'm not
you can't do that if you're anyone, right?
Well, certainly, but again, the artfulness of managing systems is really difficult. I've managed a system with 7,000 people. It was very difficult. People got into battles with each other. They're asking you to make decisions about who was right. I'm like, no one's right when you're fighting. So, yes. So I have to say, look, I think we're good with each other, and I appreciate getting to this place. I also, I hope one day I'll meet you, and you can know that I'm a decent person, and I can know that you're a decent person, and that we can even engage in ideas. Maybe you have some that you will help me. Maybe I have some that will help you. You just never know.
I would be very happy for that opportunity. I say this to people who run for office. I say this to people who are in office. The faculty in our department in Lincoln, I think you and I hope you know, we are always at your disposal. And if there are things that we can do for for the congressman, if he has the desire to come speak to students, to sit in on classes, the same is true for his staff. The university is available to all of you, and certainly the political science department would love to host you.
Kevin asked me to come and do maybe a class with him, and frankly, I think the debate that interests me most of all is the part of the struggle that I have with the right is that they just say cut. The problem that I have with the left is they just say more.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we get out of this sort of less or more? And how do we think about getting involved in the dynamic of human life, like the cities where we've seen rates of diabetes quadruple in low-income families and asthma triple, and we're getting farther away from helping, and educational attainment is slipping, and we don't seem to know what to do except for more. And the politics of it makes it hard for the middle to come together and solve these problems that are really they're wicked problems.
Yes.
And I think we need to have the debate that allows us to say, how do we let go of more, and how do we let go of cut, and how do we come to this place of a deeper understanding that allows us to truly make and create a more perfect union. That's it.
Well, in this way, and I'll leave you with this because I know you have things to do, but I have always said, I am not a native Nebraskan. I moved here in 2007, but I have always said that Nebraska is a unique place, and it is an interesting model for the rest of the country if only the country would pay attention to us and get to know us a little bit. When I came to Nebraska, I discovered a fiercely politically independent group of people. The unicameral legislature and its nonpartisan, non-professional nature is the best example of this because it gets you outcomes that you wouldn't expect to get and that you don't get anywhere else in the country. And I think that the way that our politicians, at least historically, have approached political problems is a model for everybody. I think, unfortunately, I tend to think we're getting away from that. We've become much more partisan in the last few years than we used to be in the good old days when I first moved here. But there is still, without a doubt, a kind of fiercely independent streak here in our politics.
Well, and I think in a certain sense, I'll say this, a small c conservative, a self-prudence, but then a deep concern about the neighbor. So I have my little credenza with people who've called, and I've developed these relationships with all these fiercely independent people because I really love them. I mean, I don't really like the knee-jerk conservatives. They kind of, and I don't really like, I mean, I like progressives actually more in some ways than knee-jerk conservatives because you can't have a conversation with those who are part of the right. But anyway, I have all this credenza people who, you know, but mostly their message is this. I have gotten what I need, but I'm concerned about my neighbor. I love that.
Yes.
I love that, and I think that instinct of Nebraskans is really powerful. My family settled Central Texas as German settlers. We left Germany fighting the Kaiser, and were intellectuals, and we were forced out of Germany in the diaspora of the middle of the 19th century. And if you look at Central Texas, where the two largest counties in Texas at the time were the German counties in 1850, and they were the ones that took all the money from the oil royalties and put it aside for universities because they believed in the intellectual pursuits of the state, and I think they shaped that state profoundly. But more than that, they're prudent, and they're not overly wealthy, but they're overly healthy because of this notion of being concerned about each other, and I think that's really important. So it's similar in Nebraska, and I really believe that we're honored to be part of this state in that sense.
Well, it sounds like we have a similar understanding of the kind of backbone of politics in some of these places that could work as a model, and I'm glad to
totally agree. So let's write something together about why and how. I mean, let's take the left and right and say, how do we do this together in a meaningful way? Because, you know, I mean, we have to fix this healthcare debacle. It's still a mess, and we have worked hard on that. You know, as a physician who wants to build access, Mr. Fortenberry put together a working group of 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans, and we got ideas that both sides really liked and would have dealt with pre-existing illnesses, but neither side of the party wanted to do anything. The Democrats didn't want to do anything because they didn't want to solve the problem, and the Republicans didn't want to understand it. So it's exasperating, frankly.
Yes, I agree with you, and I see the same thing not only on health insurance but also on immigration. These are frustrating problems. They're not minor problems, but they're also not unsolvable, and unfortunately our politics currently treats them like they are.
All right. I think we're on the same page. I hope we found a place of relationship that we can nurture, and I hope that you will. Let's keep talking.
That sounds just fine to me. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.